Hi, y'all, and welcome to the live stream tonight. I want to say from the start, this is not the video that I plan to do, and it's for sure not the video that I wanted to do. I've been a lawyer for more than 25 years. I won't even say how many more, but more than. And my goal has been to take the legal cases that everybody's talking about and to make them understandable with charts and graphs and timelines. I'm not trying to break news, to break legal news, or to do journalism. That hasn't been my goal. But there is something in a legal document that's been filed in the Rex Heuermann case related to the Long Island serial murders, and it's so important, and I don't see anybody talking about it. And I struggled with, well, should I do this? Should I do this video? Finally I've decided I don't see how I can ignore it. And so I'm going to throw it out there. I'm going to show you what I see in this legal document, and I'm going to ask you what you think it means and what you think it says. So the police, as everyone knows, have chased the Long Island serial killer, also known as the Gilgo Beach Serial Killer, for more than 10 years. There were 11 bodies found along a deserted stretch of beach highway, and police were unsure. Are they all linked? Were there different killers? And in fact, they've said they think probably more than one killer was involved with so many bodies, that it was more than one. It wasn't just one serial killer who killed 11, but there were people, more than one, who had killed people and left them along the stretch of highway. But 2 weeks ago, they charged a Manhattan architect, Rex Heuermann, with the murders of 3 of the 11 people whose bodies were found along that beach highway. And they were all 3 young women who had been working as sex workers in or around Manhattan and New York. And police have said they actually believed a 4th person, a 4th of the bodies they found was also killed by Rex Heuermann. They haven't actually charged him with that yet. So far, they've only charged him with the 3. But many people have asked, was Rex Heuermann acting alone? Was he doing all of this by himself, just these 3 murders? And I want to be clear on this. I'm not talking about, was there more than one person who killed somebody and left the body along that stretch of beach highway? Was more than one person responsible for the 11 bodies? I'm talking about whether or not more than one person was responsible for the 3 murders that Rex Heuermann is now charged with. That's what I'm talking about. And the question has been, did he conspire with someone else to commit those 3 murders, and then quite potentially the 4th murder that police say he is the chief suspect for? So I'm going to show you a search warrant from South Carolina. We'll get into it, and you can answer 3 questions for yourself. The first is this document real? The second question is, what is this document about, and why are they looking in South Carolina when murders happened in New York? And then the third thing is, what about the huge surprise in this document that seems to contradict some of the other evidence that we've been shown in the case so far? If it's real, it's hugely important for 2 reasons. The first is for what it says about a potential conspiracy. And the second reason it's important is because it's a roadmap to what law enforcement is looking for, not just in South Carolina, but in New York. What law enforcement thinks they may be able to find, what they think will convince a jury that Rex Heuermann is the Long Island serial killer who killed these 3 women and possibly the 4th. So you don't want to, our next video is going to be unpacking and it's what I started with. I was going to talk about what the document shows us as far as a roadmap is concerned. That's now going to be the next video. So be sure to hit the subscribe button, because you don't want to miss that. It does give us a map for where law enforcement is going and what they're trying to find. But for now, we're going to talk about the question of conspiracy and whether more than one person was involved. Also, if you would hit the like button, that'll help the video to get out to more people. So the first question we have to ask is the document real? And let me go ahead and share my screen with you so you can see the document that I'm talking about. It's a search warrant in the state of South Carolina, the county of Chester. You can see that it's dated July 14th. It's got a clerk of court stamp at the top, stamp filed. You can see, and I've got it highlighted for you. That's my edition, not the original. There's an affidavit of a New York City sergeant, Brad Bowers, and there are particular things that they're asking for. Then if you keep going down, you'll see that it's signed by the judge, it's signed by the affiant, meaning the person who wrote the affidavit. The clerk of court, another stamp, here's a search warrant, another signature, dated, more stamps. You can see it looks very official, right? It looks for real. But of course, that doesn't mean anything. It's a document that's been floating around on Reddit, but could someone have doctored it? Well, it's possible. So I set out to try to figure that out because I didn't want to talk about a document. If in fact it was something that wasn't real, if it was something that somebody had made up. So one of the first things I did was reach out to the reporter who had first said he had seen this particular search warrant and talked about what was in it. And I sent him a copy of what I had seen on the internet. I asked him, is that the search warrant? And right before I came on tonight, I got something back from him saying, yes, that is what I saw. That is the search warrant. The second thing I did was I reached out to the clerk's office and asked, is the document floating around? Is this document the very document that is from your court? And the clerk's office told me, yes, this is the document. This is the document used in South Carolina for searching, and this is what they were looking for. So to me, that was pretty strong. I felt comfortable with that. And so I'm going to talk about from here on as if this search warrant is a real document. It's actually the one filed in South Carolina and pursued by law enforcement. I'm going to assume that it's true because I felt like that was strong enough evidence that I was going to act on it. So now, okay, the second question is, what is this search warrant? I want to say just briefly, search warrants, you may think of, in general that it's when law enforcement wants to find information related to an investigation they have going. That's obvious enough. But what you may not know is that it has to be specific. You can't just say, I'm out looking for anything related to this murder. And the court says, okay, sure, get whatever you want. That isn't how it works. They have to be specific. I'm going to go here and I'm going to look for this and this and this, and that's what I'm going to do. And then the court says yes or no. And in this case, as you could see from the document, the court said yes and signed the search warrant. Often a search warrant is sealed while a case is under investigation. And sometimes it's never unsealed, but sometimes after the investigation is closed, the search warrant gets open. So that was one reason why I was wondering, is this the real search warrant? And that's another reason why this search warrant is so important, because we get to see it and it gives us some information about where law enforcement is headed. Now, you may be wondering, why South Carolina? These bodies were found in New York. The person who was arrested is from New York. He supposedly committed the murders in New York. He's being prosecuted in New York. Why are we in South Carolina? Well, the answer is, and let me share my screen with you again. The answer is that Rex Heuermann's brother Craig lives in South Carolina, and this search warrant was directed to something that he owned, according to the search warrant. So the search warrant says they want to see a Chevy Avalanche in the possession of Craig Heuermann, and they give his address and so forth, which I blocked out on the search warrant. And so, okay, that explains why they're down in South Carolina, but there's another connection to South Carolina, and that's that a bit ago, about a year and a half, I think, maybe even a little bit less, Rex Heuermann and his wife supposedly purchased 4 plots of land in Chester, really near Rex's brother Craig. And the plan, according to neighbors, was they were going to retire down there to Chester, South Carolina. They bought these 4 lots for $180K, and they were going to live there permanently when Rex Heuermann retired. He is 59 years old. So, but why did police were looking, as I said, for a car? I'll take you into the search warrant, and they say specifically, and I'll tell you, I'll flip down to the part, they were looking for a dark green in color 2002 Chevrolet Avalanche, bearing, VIN number, etc., registered to Craig Heuermann, which is believed to be located in South Carolina. And then it talks about what the proof would be. So he's in South Carolina, and they're saying, we want to see the Chevy Avalanche that's in his possession. This was a public document filed. Or, well, yes, it is a public document now. So filed, and they said, all right, what, and you may be wondering, why? Why are they looking for this Chevy Avalanche? Why is it important in the case? So let's take a look at and that's the description of what they were looking for. But here's why it's so important. We can flip over to the bail application that was filed in New York when they talked to the judge about whether or not Rex Heuermann should be given bail. Should that be allowed or should it not? And what they said was that they talked specifically about the Chevy Avalanche that he had owned, in which apparently he gave to his brother, because it's clear in the search warrant that the brother is actually that the car is now registered to the brother in South Carolina, in Chester, South Carolina. So in what it said was that they were looking for, and I'll show you what they said about the Chevy Avalanche. I'll flip down to the page I want. That when Amber Costello, one of the victims, was last seen, that she was last seen with a white male, described him, and that at the time she was seen with this man, there was a first generation Chevrolet Avalanche parked in the driveway. That was a whole incident which we've talked about before, and which I'll talk about again when I talk specifically about the Chevy Avalanche and what's important about it. But what the witness said was he saw that Chevy Avalanche. Then the next day, Amber Costello was going to meet with the same client she had met with the day before, and he saw that she walked out to meet this person, and he saw that car drive by again. So he was saying that this Chevy Avalanche, first generation Chevy Avalanche, traced back to the person who was last seen with Amber Costello. And that's why law enforcement thinks it's so important. So let's take a look. Let's go back to the search warrant. And I want you to see why I think it's very likely a copy of what they did in New York. Because that's something that's pretty common. You take what you've done in one state, you're going to ask for something more in another state, and you copy it over. That's true throughout, the legal field. So you get things correct. And here's why I think that. If you take a look up at, for example, number, if you take a look at what they're going for, remember that they're going to be looking specifically at the Chevy Avalanche. They were not going into Craig Heuermann's home. There's not a suggestion that he was involved in any way. There's simply the suggestion that they want that Chevy Avalanche. But here's what they can look for when they go and find the Chevy Avalanche. Here's what they're given permission to look for. And one of the things they're specifically given permission to look for is anything related to locked rooms, storage areas, vaults, cabinets, safes, closets, desks, or drawers. Now, I personally have never seen a car that had any of those things. It's in those very top lines up there. It's, I think, the third line where I'm reading from. I've never seen a car with a locked room, with a storage area, with a vault or a cabinet or a safe or a closet or a desk or drawers. I've not seen that. That would be very unusual to see a car that had those things. So that's why I think this is something that was copied over from when it was done in New York, and likely a map to what the police looked for when they searched Rex Heuermann's home in New York. But that's just a guess. I don't know that. I'm just saying that's what I think probably is the source of this document and why I think it's so important. But now let's go to that third question. The third question was, what does this document say about conspiracy? And I want to take you to the middle paragraph here. Let's make sure. Yeah, that's big enough. Okay. The middle paragraph, description of premises, person, place, or thing to be searched. and take a look at what they were looking for. They were looking for the Chevy Avalanche. Let's go on down. Regarding the charge of inter alia, murder in the first degree, they cite the New York state law for that. Murder in the second degree, they cite the New York law for that. Patronizing a person for prostitution in the third degree, they cite the law for that. And conspiracy to commit said offenses in violation of Article 105 of the New York State Penal Law. And for that reason, it's ordered that once target vehicle 1 is transported to Suffolk County, then they're going to search the vehicle. They're going to search and seize the following evidence. And so they taught then about what they're going to be looking for further. And I think that is critically important. We knew about the charge of murder in the first degree. We knew about the charge of murder in the second degree. Those two were both included in that bail application I showed you just a minute ago. If we go back over here, you can see, sorry if I'm making you dizzy, but there on the first page, they talk about murder in the first degree. They talk about murder in the second degree. We knew about that. What's not included is anything related to prostitution, patronizing a prostitute, and there's nothing in there about conspiracy. That's not included in the bail application in the New York filing. This is different. This says something we didn't know about. And let's talk a little bit about conspiracy, because this is the question of the day. What does that mean? If they're looking at conspiracy, and I want you to know this too, it says conspiracy to commit said offenses. It doesn't say said offense. It's not just referring to prostitution. It's said offenses, conspiracy to commit all of those. And that's what they're allowed to look for. That's what they say they're charging and going to pursue. And that's what they're looking for when they execute this particular search warrant. So that immediately set off alarm bells for me, because conspiracy is something very specific. You can't conspire with yourself. It can't be you, yourself, and I, you, yourself, and you, me, myself, and I conspiring, because that's not a conspiracy. That's just going out and doing a crime. Conspiracy is when, and I'll take you to the New York law about conspiracy in the second degree. First degree relates to conspiring with a minor. Second degree is a person is guilty of conspiracy in the second degree when, with intent that conduct constituting a Class A felony be performed, he agrees with one or more persons to engage in or cause the performance of such conduct. And critically important in that is agrees with one or more persons, not just agreed with himself, thought, think I'll commit a crime. I'm going to conspire with myself. That's not possible. Conspiracy is more than one person. And they specifically stated in here that they were looking and that they were charging conspiracy. Now, that's also confirmed by what was stated in the Chester News and Reporter about the search warrant that the reporter saw. He said that the warrant states that the truck is believed to have contraband evidence or instrumentalities regarding the charge of murder in the first degree, New York State, murder in the second degree, New York State, patronizing a person for prostitution in the third degree, New York State, and conspiracy to commit said offenses. So once again, conspiracy was specifically stated and something that he noted. Now, I want to go through whether or not law enforcement likely thinks this is a conspiracy. Now, based on those documents, I think you can see why I would think it's at least something that people ought to consider and ought to be looking at and discussing. I'm going to give you the arguments for and against it. What self-respecting lawyer can't argue both sides, right? So here are the reasons why I think law enforcement might not think that there is a conspiracy. The first is that this isn't a proven document, but I think based on the fact that both the reporter and the clerk told me this was in fact the document that they saw and that was filed, it makes me believe that this is likely the document. This is the real thing. The second thing is South Carolina could have gotten some of that wrong, copied it over. Again, pretty unlikely. Someone from New York comes down, swears to this before the judge, or files something swearing to it before the judge, and That's pretty important. I don't think they would have gotten it wrong. It doesn't say conspiracy to what, and that might be a weakness. It's hard to understand what they think was the conspiracy. What was the subject matter of it? Was it conspiracy to commit murder? Was it conspiracy to conceal a body? Was it conspiracy related to the prostitution? I don't picture them making it just about the prosecution, because they would almost have to say then that the victims conspired with Rex Heuermann to commit prostitution. I do not picture that being something that would ever be included in this case. So it could be that they were just being safe. They were just saying conspiracy, because that way, if you end up having to charge more people, it's no problem. You've already got that included. You've laid the groundwork for that. It could be that. But the number one holdback I have is that it seems odd. It seems at odds with the other things we know about this case. For example, the bail application mentioned nothing about other people who were involved. It did mention hairs of Heuermann's wife that were on the 3 of the bodies that were found, but at the same time, it specifically said that Rex Heuermann's wife was out of town for several of the murders, and it was very clear that the wife, the children, they weren't even there, and suggested this was something that Rex Heuermann did on his own. It also made the point that Rex Heuermann's wife that she specifically had that the hairs that were found on the bodies could have come from things just around the house, like if the canvas was kept at the house, if duct tape was kept at the house. The fact that New York made that point suggests to me that they don't see her as as conspiring with her husband, but that's one possibility. The fact, though, if you look at the fact that they're according to the bail application, Rex Heuermann used secret phone numbers, he used secret emails, he used burner phones, things that people didn't know about. That seems like something done in private, something done without any input from somebody else. But then I want to take it on the other side. The argument for law enforcement thinking there was a conspiracy it's right there. It says that in the document. It says conspiracy in the search warrant itself. And typically, law enforcement would not mention an offense and request something for that if it didn't think some grounds existed for that. And charging conspiracy or even alleging conspiracy would require more than one person. So you have it right there in the document that they say conspiracy, and they refer to conspiracy to commit offenses, not just one, but offenses, more than one. So does that mean they think the brother was involved? Again, that seems kind of unlikely. It sounds like Rex Heuermann gave his brother his old car when he got a new one, and that's far from murder. That's far from hiding a body. We don't know when the brother moved to South Carolina, but it would be, if he lived in South Carolina at the time of the murders, it'd be very hard for him to conspire with his brother related to that, because the murders happened apparently in New York. As I said, the wife, it seems unlikely based on the way law enforcement has approached things. So who is the conspiracy part? Why is that mentioned in the search warrant? I would like your opinions. Do you think that conspiracy is there because they believe someone in particular may have been involved? Do you think conspiracy is there just dotting the I's, crossing the T's, making sure they don't leave anything out for future? What do you think is the reason for that? And if you think it could be someone specific, do you have an idea? Do you have an idea of who it would be? If you have enjoyed this video and appreciate the work went into it, please do hit the like button. That would mean a lot. I'll see you on Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern.